In League of Legends, we often hear about these super teams that seem unstoppable on paper. But time and time again, they fall short. Take Cloud9 for example. This year, they were expected to be the top team in the LCS. With 3 former MVPs like Blaber, Berserker, and JoJo, plus multi-time champions like Fudge and Vulcan, they seemed like they had everything. Their coach, Reapered, had also won titles in the past. They were coming off a strong year, having won 2 of the last 3 splits, and they hadn't missed Worlds since 2020. But after all this hype, they failed to qualify for Worlds this year, which is a huge shock. The only other time Cloud9 missed Worlds was back in 2020. So what happened? Why did this super team fall apart when everyone expected them to dominate? Today we'll break down where Cloud9 went wrong, why they couldn't win, and how their situation is actually similar to other super teams in the past, like the 2022 Team Liquid squad, which also failed to qualify for Worlds despite being stacked with talent. Let's break down each game in the series to understand where things went wrong for Cloud9. Game 1 was probably the closest match of the series. Cloud9 went all in on an early game strategy. They picked champions like Renekton, LeBlanc, Miss Fortune, and Alistair to try and snowball the game early. 100 Thieves, on the other hand, picked more scaling champions like Cassante, Maokai, Corki, and Ziggs. At first, things looked great for C9. They had a strong lead in the early game. Thanatos, playing Renekton, had a massive CS lead over Sniper, and Blaber's jungle pick, Nidalee, was ahead of Maokai. Berserker was also doing well, with Miss Fortune quickly getting his Bloodthirster. C9 was stacking Drakes and was looking to close out the game with their lead. But here's the problem. Even though C9 was ahead, they couldn't close it out. LeBlanc, played by JoJo, struggled in teamfights, which allowed 100 Thieves to slowly come back. Despite having a 5,000 goal lead, C9 couldn't convert it into a win. 100 Thieves played better in teamfights and managed to take the game. In Game 2, Cloud9 made some old decisions. JoJo played Nasus, while Quid played Garen. But the real difference came in the jungle. Blaber played Ivern, and River played Vi. The problem was that Ivern didn't have a lot of damage, and without the right champions around him, he couldn't do much. In contrast, River's Vi was more aggressive and had a bigger impact. The biggest surprise of this game was Berserker's performance on Kai'Sa. He was able to make an impact here, while in other games, he struggled. C9 won this game, but it wasn't convincing. The draft was odd, and the team didn't seem to have a clear plan moving forward. Game 3 is where things really started to fall apart. Cloud9 picked Ivern early, and 100 Thieves quickly picked Seri to counter it. But instead of picking a champion that could take advantage of Ivern's playstyle, C9 chose LeBlanc, which just didn't fit. JoJo might have had a strong early game, but in teamfights, LeBlanc was too easy to shut down. River, as Maokai, simply had to press W on JoJo, and 100 Thieves could easily shut him down in teamfights. In the end, C9 couldn't handle 100 Thieves' superior team fighting. They lost the game, and now they were 1 game away from elimination. For Game 4, Cloud9 tried to adapt. They picked Ziggs first, which seemed like a good idea. However, they didn't pick Kai'Sa, which could have paired well with Ziggs to give them more team fight power. Instead, they went for Corki, even though Ivern had already been banned by 100 Thieves. This meant they lost their advantage in scaling, and things quickly started to fall apart. Berserker missed several key Ziggs ultimates in teamfights, and 100 Thieves capitalized on C9's mistakes. They played better, and Cloud9 seemed like they were too nervous, missing a lot of key opportunities. In the end, 100 Thieves closed out the series, securing the upset win. The biggest issue was Cloud9's draft. They didn't play to their players' strengths. For example, if you're going to have Blaber on Ivern, don't pair him with JoJo on LeBlanc. Ivern needs a champion who can help him control the map and scale into the late game, not a high-damage, fragile champion like LeBlanc. They also made the mistake of putting Berserker on Ziggs, a champion that required a lot of setup from the team, something Cloud9 didn't provide. If they had stuck to what worked for them, picking champions like Renekton for Thanatos and scaling champions for the other roles, things might have gone differently. But the mismatch in their drafts made it hard for them to execute their strategy. Another issue was Cloud9's lack of confidence. After losing to FlyQuest, they seemed to lose faith in their strategy and tried to adapt to the meta, but they didn't fully commit to the changes. They tried to shift to a more meta-conforming playstyle, but that wasn't the way to beat the top teams like FlyQuest and Team Liquid. Cloud9's strength had always been their ability to win lane and snowball the game. But when they changed that, they lost their identity and failed to adapt properly. There's a clear difference when you look at other successful teams like FlyQuest and Team Liquid. These teams have a better mix of veterans and younger players. The veterans know how to play together, and the younger players are willing to follow their lead. They have a strong, unified vision for how to play the game, and their champion pools are flexible enough to adapt to any situation. Looking at Team Liquid in 2022, for example, they had a super team on paper, but couldn't get it together. Despite having amazing players, they couldn't align on a shared vision for the game, so they failed. Cloud9 faced similar issues this year. They had the talent but couldn't play as a cohesive team. So what went wrong for Cloud9? It all comes down to their drafts, lack of confidence, and failure to adapt. The team didn't play to its strengths, and when things didn't go as planned, it didn't have the tools to recover. If they had stuck to what they were good at, winning lane and playing aggressively, they probably would have made it to Worlds. But now Cloud9 faces a long off-season ahead, and they'll have to make sure if they want to come back stronger next year. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on Cloud9's performance and what changes you think they should make. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications.